I didn't intend to read as much vampire romance as I did this year, but alas, here we are. Guess I really needed to sink my teeth into that subgenre. Hi, my name's Rachel, and today we're talking about The Sacrifice and the Bear. I wanted to say stare again. I keep saying The Sacrifice and the Stare. Unfortunately, this is not sentient stare romance. If you're looking for that, I'm sure Natalie's done that over on her channel. Today we're talking about The Sacrifice and the Spare by L. Backenstow. This is a standalone romantic fantasy featuring a murder mystery and a arranged marriage between a vampire woman and a human guy who is a prince, and he is the Spare. He is the prince. What's that guy's name? The redhead one? Harry? He's the Prince Harry. So it's Prince Harry meets Underworld. God, I wish. That sounds actually much better than what we actually have for you today. Now, this is a novella. It's a shorter book. It's 100 pages long. So about 100 pages less than a normal, typical novel. And this could have been fine with the amount of pages that it has. But we wasted an awful lot of time on this being rhymes with corny. In fact, every vampire-related romance or romantasy I've read this year that has vampires in it has been really heavy on the rhymes with corny. But this one is too short to do that to this degree, especially because how dare you not give me a decent murder mystery, you tease. When I think about shorter fiction, so I'm talking for me about things under 200 pages, and when I'm thinking about what I want out of shorter fiction, I have to think about examples from this year of shorter fiction that I've read that made an impact on me, and then go sort of like a roundabout way of expressing what I want from, the next shorter piece of fiction that I read. I reviewed a few pieces of short fiction this year, actually a handful, a lot. I've read a lot of short fiction this year, and some of them, two specifically, were tremendous reads in about 60 pages. Two of my absolute favorite books of this year are examples of that. And I feel like I now understand what I want out of shorter reads and where they work and where they fail because of help from today's sponsor, which is Skillshare. Skillshare has this great class from author Yi-Yoon Lee called Writing Character-Driven Short Stories, and the purpose of this class is to develop the ability to, in a short story, achieve the effect that you would like to have on your audience, which is very difficult to do when you're writing a shorter amount of words, obviously. You really have to be efficient with what you're working with. Yi-Yoon Lee says that short stories, these sort of snapshot stories, are like taking a piece of cake. If you consider a full-length novel a cake, then a short story is a piece of that cake, but that doesn't mean that the story is lesser or less good than the whole cake. You can still experience this delicious essence within just that piece. And that's the challenge with writing a shorter story, is you are writing a slice of a life, but still trying to show that whole essence of that life. She even gives examples of how short stories, even that are 1 page long, readers are given enough to understand the full dynamic between the characters. Yi-Yoon Lee says that writing short stories are an exercise in writing efficiently, and I completely agree. So I've been using what I learned from this class to help me understand shorter fiction and write reviews of shorter fiction. Reflecting on using Skillshare in this last year to help me write my reviews, I really love that I dedicated time to learning about shorter fiction, how it's written, and therefore I use that to review it, say where it worked and where it did not. I really challenged myself to learn how to review shorter fiction, and I feel like I succeeded in meeting that personal goal, and this class helped me meet that personal goal. But it's not just writing. You can find a class that will teach you the skills you need to meet your personal goals. Skillshare is the largest online learning community for creatives with a wide variety of topics for you to be able to learn about and take your hobby or your side hustle to the next level. Cooking, video editing, illustration, writing, productivity, whatever craft you want to excel at, you can learn more with Skillshare. The first 500 people to click my link below will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Get started today. Find the key to mastering that recipe that you're working on, or perfecting that short story you've been writing, or learn watercolor painting. You can do all of that and more with Skillshare. Just click the link below to get started today. And thank you so much to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. All right, Sacrifice and the Spare. Let me give you the synopsis of this. When a human prince takes a vampire bride, can love bloom where death is sown. As the Spare, Prince Callan is duty-bound to wed the to wed the woman chosen for him, even if it means marrying a vampire. After Bria is selected from the neighboring vampire clan, Callan can't deny the heat that sparks between them, but his cautious, wow, doing real good today. Cautious optimism goes up in smoke when the heir to the throne is found dead. That's his brother. And Bria is the top suspect, for literally no reason other than she was there in the castle and is a vampire. It's not like he was found with bites on his neck. This goes downhill pretty quick. Bria can't remember her life before she became a vampire, and we do nothing with this, which sucks. But she knows she was made for one, two, but she knows she was, the word one, the words for one are tripping me up there because you don't actually need that, like, okay, whatever. But she knows she was made for one to wed the second prince of Dolbrin, a human prince. In a kingdom of strangers, Bria anticipates being a lamb to slaughter, but the last thing she expects is to be framed for killing the heir. Now she must trust that the fledgling bond between her and Callan is enough to see her rightfully freed. Fledgling bond, by that we mean rhymes with they're corny. I have to go through this because, of course, as usual, I can't export my notes because I highlighted too much. Hate that freaking rule on Kindle, I swear to God. We start with a note from the author that says, this novella is intended for adult readers, is not suitable for those under the age of 18. In addition to the potential triggers listed below, this story also contains several instances of mature language, violence, and detailed descriptions of sexual acts. Trigger warning for death and murder, biting, and blood kink. Chapter 1 is in Callan's POV. Callan had never been more aware of the blood pumping through his veins than when he met the piercing violet gaze of the predator he'd made his wife. As second in line for the throne, Prince Callan of Dobrin had performed his royal duty. We enter and they've already been married, so we just skip past the marriage and we are at the wedding feast. What is she feasting on? Nothing, because they didn't prepare any blood for her.
I will make your neck my chalice.
And they're all sort of treating her like shit. I'm not really sure why she needed to marry him, like what they got out of it other than like, I guess maybe now they're agreeing not to kill each other, except she was like created to marry him, but we never go into depth with this. So I don't know. I don't really know what the stakes are here. Why are you asking me? I just read it.
Why should I know these things? Do you know them?
Callan felt the first brush of regret as he beheld the woman, the creature that was now his, and he hers. Bria was far from the blushing bride he'd once imagined for himself. He wasn't even sure vampires could blush, but they can them, so anyway, maybe it's an Edward Cullen type thing. Her skin was as pale as moonlight and smooth as stone, lacking any hint of the life force that animated her. This is the skin of a killer, Bella. She stood with such unnatural stillness, one might think her dead. Wasn't she sort of dead? She's a vampire, isn't she undead?
I didn't know he was dead.
Living dead.
Shut up.
Raven black hair contrasted her pale skin. She was lovely in a way that made him suspect she'd been chosen specifically for this purpose, perhaps even made for him. And indeed she was, which we get told in passing and then do nothing with ever again. His cousin is the captain of the guard, shows up, is like, a little late for cold feet. Callan's like, it's a lot to take in. I imagine it is, but it's done now. No reason to dwell on what ifs, and the what is can't become the what isn't. Callan squinted at his cousin in confusion, wondering if the ale had so quickly addled his brain. Yes, me too.
Everyone here very stoned?
So it mentions that his brother is the Light Prince and he the Dark Prince. He'd always been in his brother's shadow, the afterthought, the fallback, the spare. Nobody ever calls him the Dark Prince after this, so I don't really know why we brought that up at all. They're almost identical in appearance, despite the fact that I believe they are half-brothers, and also Torin is 2 years older than him. So Torin, the, prince that is the one who's going to be king someday, he's going to get murdered, though. How is she meant to warm your bed when her body is cold as ice? And Callan is horrified by this because he's a good guy. That's the only character trait he has. He's nice. And he realizes, because he's looking at his wife Bria, that she heard what his brother just said. He didn't know the extent of their heightened senses until he saw the hurt flash across her face. Torin says, I do hope for your sake that you won't experience any shrinkage from the cold.
The mind is stronger than the penis.
Nothing can defeat the penis!
You do well to remember, brother. Though she may not be the future queen, she is still a member of the royal family and my wife! Ugh. No, not the my wife stuff starting already. It's not earned. It's too early. You just got married. I didn't even see it. She is still a member of the royal family and my wife. I will not stand for any defamation against her person from you or anyone else. The king demanded the union and I intend to honor it. I suggest you do the same. So he leaves his own wedding celebration, goes to his room, and a woman shows up in his room, and her name is Pharaoh, and Farrow, not like Pharaoh PH. He and Pharaoh had been in an intimate relationship for the better part of a year until he called it off at the announcement of his betrothal. A few hours married to some blood bitch and you've already forgotten about me? This is so cheesy. She smiled and it was a terrifying thing, a toothy approximation of joy that failed to reach her eyes. For they'd had many enjoyable meetings between the sheets, she'd never been more than that. Enjoyable meetings. Next time I have sex, I'm going to call it an enjoyable meeting. I'm gonna text my friends like, I just had the most enjoyable meeting. She prowled toward him, stopping only when the tips of her silk-covered breasts brushed his front. She'll never satisfy you like I can.
He's evil, you gunless tit.
Whenever you get tired of fucking that animated corpse, I'll be waiting. So she is undead, so we agree. Bria is a vampire, not a corpse. Well, I mean, okay, I don't know what everyone's obsession is with our marital acts. Me neither, to be honest. But what happens within our chamber is no one's business but our own. Insult her again, and you'll be the one whose body will become food for the maggots. He just threatened her whole life over making like a negative comment about a vampire he just married and has never spoken to. Okay, Callan heaved an exasperated breath and stalked off to find the salvation of his room and hopefully his wife. If tonight was any indication, they had a long road ahead. It's pretty short and nothing much happened. There was no better time to ensure they were both headed in the same direction. I wish that we had seen a scene of them before the wedding. We could have skipped all of that, honestly. We could have skipped all of that. We could have had them meeting before the wedding and having a conversation, and then we just skipped past the wedding to the next scene is, you know, him talking to this girl that he used to fuck. Or honestly, cut out the girl he used to fuck entirely because she's completely useless to the story. We should have had scenes with the mom and you'll learn why. Hi. Just to pop in here real quick about the original idea about them meeting before they got married and doing character work there so that the romance feels earned. I started this book, Radiance by Grace Draven, and it literally does that. That's the beginning of the book, is these two people are like, ew, I don't want to marry them. They're that other race and I don't like them. They look so ugly, but we have to do it for politics, right? But they meet before and they don't know that it's each other. And they have like a friendship connection. And then it's like friends to lovers, I assume. I'm still working on it. But this feels like we're earning that emotional depth, right? This book that I'm currently talking about, Sacrifice and Despair, does not have that. This does, and it did it so much better, and I should have read this instead. We could have done this in 100 pages. We just needed to be more efficient with it and do more character building rather than pondering on how nice he is whenever somebody says anything mean about his new vampire wife. Chapter 2, Bria. Bria didn't know if the humans starved her out of cruelty or ignorance. Me neither. I don't understand how they set up this entire thing where she was going to have to marry a dude in the human realm and live there, and then nobody thought about the fact that she's, you know, gonna have to drink some blood, but they do very well know she's a vampire. I mean, they're constantly all talking about it, so sure. All she knew was that days had passed since she'd been properly fed. Relations between humans and vampires had been strained since her people first united as one clan under Santiago's rule. Individually, vampires could be hunted down and killed like animals. Together, they posed so great a threat to mankind that the king himself offered up a son as a peace offering. Did he really offer up a son, or did he offer a place next to his spare son? I don't really understand what the vampires are much getting out of this. Sure, they could be hunted down, but aren't they more powerful because they're vampires? She was no innocent maiden, but she certainly didn't expect her sexual exploits to be the topic of dinner conversation among royals. Me neither. I don't know why that keeps happening.
It's horrible. That's me as a vampire? I'm so evil and skanky.
She had no family that she knew of besides Santiago. Not even her maker had been willing to risk the journey into enemy territory, though he was half the reason she was here. So she was made by the vampire leader Santiago, made into a vampire. She does not remember her former family. She has no flashbacks of her life before, and she doesn't think, why am I doing this?
I'm a blood-sucking fiend. Look at my outfit.
Ever. She just does it. So she got made into a vampire to be a sacrifice, to sit with the humans, to hang with them for a treaty, I guess. I don't know. Very wishy-washy. Didn't need to be this way. Could have done some cool shit with that. She hated to be so vulnerable in the house of her enemy. Vampires might have heightened senses and strength, but their weaknesses were many. Sunlight, silver, and hunger. She had half a mind to capture one of the servants for a quick bite, but she didn't want to frighten the help on her first night. She had no allies, no kin. Already a nearby maid darted wary glances her way. Some vampires preferred the taste of hunted prey, indulging in the bitter tang of terror like a fine wine. To Bria, there was no greater deterrent. She's nice too. Yay! So she asked asks the servant, hey, can you show me where my room is? And the servant's like, oh, you have to stay in your husband's room now. I don't know why they didn't discuss any of this before. And the servant is about to leave and she's like, hey, I need blood, like to live. You need to go get me blood. And the girl gets real scared and she like darts out of there. It seemed they really did plan for her to starve on their wedding night. Guess who's gonna feed her? So she goes to his room and he's got a great room because he's a prince and he enjoys darkness. And she's like, oh, same. He was nicknamed the Shadow Prince after all. I thought it was the Dark Prince. Anyway, nobody calls him that. It's like when you try to make a nickname when you're in a new crowd and it doesn't stick because it's not really your nickname. She was hesitant to kindle the spark of hope that ignited at the possibility of having something in common with her prince. Love was too much to ask for, but maybe they could be friends. Friends with benefits if she had anything to say about it. Where is this coming from? What do you mean? It was his scent that drove her nearly mad with desire. His earthy musk laced with a hint of cardamom called to a primal part of her that urged her feet forward. Do you not fear me, husband? Should I?
Back! Get back, demon!
I think it is I that should fear you. What do you have to fear from me? Good question. You could rip his throat out. So she swoons because, you know, she's literally starving. Like something out of a romance novel, he picked her up in one deft movement and carried her to the bed. I actually don't need you to tell me that it's like something out of a romance novel. It's implied. I don't like that because it's like the author telling me, I want you to feel like this is a romance novel. It is. And he realizes, you need to feed. Drink from me. You are offering yourself to me?
I'd bite you in a heartbeat.
I am your husband. If you'd prefer someone else, I can run and fetch them. No, that won't be necessary. It's just, are you sure? It won't kill me, will it? Or turn me into a vampire? You didn't think to ask that before you offered up your... Okay. No, it's fine. You're just really dumb. I can understand why you're the spare. I honestly don't know how we plan to accommodate your dietary restrictions, and I apologize for that lack of foresight. Yeah, I am confused by that lack of foresight. I'm not really sure how y'all are in charge when you seem so stupid. She'd never been treated so delicately in all her time as a vampire. How long is that exactly again? Also, how long have you been a vampire? I'm confused. The open expression of tenderness she found on his face was so expected, it ignited a throbbing heat in her core. Surely it was her hunger, italicized, causing her to react this way. Bria waited, allowing him the chance to change his mind, to realize that she was a monster and push her away. But when his hazel eyes returned to her violet ones, she only saw longing and mild curiosity. Ah yes, because I definitely need to be reminded of eye colors over and over again. Her primal needs battled for dominance against her carnal desires, and she thought just once she'd like to be a woman first and a vampire second. So they start making out instead of her just feeding from him. He moaned into her mouth as she opened for him, inviting his tongue to dance with hers. A tangle of tongues and teeth makes an appearance again. Yay! Glorious day! Not literally, but it just reminded me of Fourth Wing. When her fangs nipped along his bottom lip, the taste of his blood made her toes curl. The evidence of his own enjoyment pressed against her thigh. When she brushed her fangs along his neck in warning, Callan's tempo didn't falter. She felt herself approaching the cusp of climax. They're literally like dry humping while she's feeding from him. And you know what? This might be the third book this year that I've read this scene from. The first one would be Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. No, it's not. I can't. Who? No, it's that. The Serpent and the Wings of Night. The Ballad and the Songbirds of Snakes does not even have a single vampire in it. Oh my god, for all of my making fun of other people not having brain cells, that was so embarrassing. I have to leave it in for accountability. You all have to know how incredibly dumb I am. And the second one would be Bride by Ali Hazelwood, which I don't remember the order in which I read those. But yeah, this is the third one. So this is like a common theme in vampire books. And that's fine, and I wouldn't mind it in here. Honestly, that scene in Bride, fine. Like, it made sense. And in fact, I like the whole thing in Bride where it was like, oh, we're gonna get caught stealing information from somebody. We have to make out. And then they're like really getting into it. And then she's drinking blood from him. It was, how am I defending an Ali Hazelwood book right now? Who am I? Oh my God, I'm having an identity crisis. Anyway, it was fine then because it felt earned, right? The stakes made sense. We had this like continuous relationship between them where they had like been trying to solve a mystery as well. We're just immediately in here and I don't like that. He arched off the bed as hot blood rushed into her mouth. It tasted of long summer days and midnight trysts. It tasted of days and midnight. at the same time. Great. It was ecstasy, and it was just the push she needed to tumble over the edge, and she arrives. Her head fell against his shoulder, and his arm wrapped around her possessively as if they'd done this 100 times before. But they haven't. This is like the first conversation they've ever had, and they just came. So like, I don't understand. How am I supposed to be rooting for these people? This is not earned. And it ends with him saying, "Hello, wife. It's so very nice to meet you."
Everyone here very stoned.
How did we put that? I don't like it. And in the next chapter, it's in his POV, and he like lets out a laugh at, I guess, his own joke of saying, "Nice to meet you." Assumedly they have met before. They got married, I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't know if it was just paper signing and this is actually the first conversation they've had. I genuinely do not know, because it didn't say. "Don't laugh at me." "I'm not, I swear on the 7 moons. Y'all have 7 moons? What are you doing with all 7 of them? He wondered idly if all vampire feedings were so erotic. I feel like if that were true, you would have heard about it before. Like, your buddy would have been going out and being like, "Yeah, man, I was out traveling and this vampire just came upon me and I had a bisexual crisis because that dude was sucking on my neck." And I just feel like you would have heard about it before if the vampire feedings were so erotic. I don't know. I don't really understand the dynamics between the humans and the vampires in this. "I'm so embarrassed," she said. "What you must think of me." "You want to know what I think of you? I think that you are brave and captivating and strong. I think you've been thrust into a new life with no guidance, no friends, and apparently no food. I practically attacked you. I think that would be within your rights as my wife, let alone a starving vampire. But you forget I was a willing participant. Are all feedings so exciting? Not at all. In fact, they're usually quite clinical if we see the donor at all. Santiago has prioritized vampire and donor relations. Most of what we drink is bottled blood from paid donors. How does his own kingdom not know about this? Like, who's living in the vampire kingdom that isn't vampires? If they're humans, which assumedly they are, because the vampires can't be feeding on themselves, so who's in charge of those humans that Santiago is paying? I'm so confused. Their union was meant to be one of many steps towards bridging the gap between their 2 peoples. Okay, so it has to be only their 2 peoples, so there can't be humans. So who is in charge? Who is the kingdom of humans? Is it not his kingdom that gets paid for human blood? I'm confused. But he knew they had many trials to overcome. I'll look into the possibility of importing bottled blood in the morning. So it's okay. I don't know. As you can imagine, we don't have a system set up for live donors, but I'm happy to provide you the service whenever needed, he added with a wink. See, we are not giving basic information. We're just maintaining being rhymes with corny. I'm so glad it was you at the end of that aisle, not idol. He startled at her voice and thanked the 7 moons. 7? That she was facing the other way and didn't witness his instant mortification. "What do you mean?" he asked. "When I first learned of this marriage, I was terrified. I thought I would be no better than a lamb for slaughter, a sacrifice for the greater good." What is that greater good again? "I heard the things humans said about me when they thought I couldn't hear or didn't care that I could, and I thought my fears were realized. However, you've been nothing but kind to me. You seem so at ease with the concept of being married to a stranger, whereas I've barely wrapped my head around the fact that we are both wed. My only options in life were to secure some sort of political alliance through marriage or lead our armies to victory in battle," he said. "I was never much of a warrior." So then she goes to take a bath and she starts thinking about him and getting rhymes with corny all over again. And there's like an entire scene of her, I'm trying to think of a euphemism. It takes me a minute. Fiddling with the clam, if you catch my drift. That was terrible, Rachel. Her hips bucked, making waves in the deep tub. She circled the swollen bundle of nerves at the apex of her thighs. Both in one sentence. Great. And she's thinking about Callan's eggplant. And it says she cried out. So like she's in his bathroom fiddling with the clam and the bathroom door opens and he's like, "What happened?" "What do you mean?" she said. Though they were married and had practically humped each other like animals. True. I was there for that. That happened on page. Callan turned away from her nudity, presenting her with his well-formed backside, an unfortunately clothed backside. "I thought I heard you yell. I worried something had happened to you. Apologies if I'm disturbing you." She liked the idea that he was coming to her rescue, as preposterous as it was for a vampire to need saving in a bathing chamber. So he sees her, without layers. I have to be so careful because YouTube will demonetize me for anything at this point. They're just like, "Did you talk about..." I said biological and they demonetized the video. I wasn't even talking about I was literally I said biological And they were like, you can't talk about that. Anyway, she said, I'm your wife, Callan. Don't you wish to see the bounty you have claimed? You are not my prize, Bria. You are my equal, my partner. This is so much so soon. This is the most insta-lovey thing. And there's no reason to write insta-love, even though you're writing a short book. You can write an earned romance, but instead we just have, this is a nice guy and this is a nice vampire woman, and now make them smooch, make them smooch. And it's like, but we didn't earn that. I don't care about these people who are just like very one-dimensional, boring people with no backstories or smooching. What do I give a shit? Then shouldn't we be equally matched, partner? Oh, partner. You wish to survey your bounty, wife? As eager as I am to enjoy the fruits of our union, dear wife, you just called her wife. Stop. You don't need to say it twice. I fear the effects of the night are catching up with me. And it's because he drank alcohol and then she sucked blood, YouTube, out of him. So, he's not feeling up to any shenanigans, if you catch my drift. Just so you know, as they lay down, I would love nothing more than to you until you call my name loud enough to wake the entire castle if I thought my body would cooperate. So she's thinking about him as they're falling asleep. She was glad in more ways than one that she'd wed Callan and not Torin. She didn't trust Torin, not with his easy smile and viper's tongue. She much preferred Callan's tough exterior and kind heart. It was a shame he was not the heir. He would make a good king, wise but fair. You just met him. You have no idea if he's wise. You just met. She dreaded life under Torin's rule. Rest, Callan. It has been a long night for both of us. Her fear and trepidation leading into this marriage had melted away. Wow, that was fast. We really just hit listen on 5 speed and just zoomed right through all the, meat of this. Great. When they wake up in the morning, they are about to boink. She explains that normally during the day, vampires sleep when the sun is out. And he's like, what if you had some physical activity to keep you awake? And then the door to his room bursts open, and his cousin, the captain of the guard, Emery, is like, there she is, your majesty. There's, the vampire woman.
Back! Get back, demon!
And the king walks in and says, Torin is dead. So the crown prince, the one who was going to be king. Silence filled the room, or maybe it was inside his head. Like a cannon had fired directly beside him. The shock sent him reeling, but he felt no pain. So that's really clunky. It sounds like what we were doing was trying to make it seem like, there was all of a sudden it sounds like silence, maybe a ringing in the ear, but instead it's like just a really clunky set of words trying to convey that idea. Everyone in the room seemed to hold their breath as Callan stared at his father, unwilling to accept that he spoke the truth. Even if it was ridiculous to think that the king of Dolbrin would lie about the death of his firstborn, the fact that Torin could actually be dead was even more absurd. It's kind of a ridiculous sentence. I would just say, no, there has to be a mistake or some confusion. Why would you? I don't know why. No, he's lying. What? The king's bottom lip trembled, the only emotion he'd permit to slip his carefully constructed mask. And Callan knew it was no lie. Oh, good. I'm glad we cleared that up, that the king is not lying about the death of his own son. Certainly was touch and go there for a minute. And so they immediately arrest Bria. Stand down, Callan. Callan refused to abandon his wife. He refused to back down and leave his wife undefended. Those are the same sentence. Those are the same thing. We did extra words and we didn't use them to build the relationship before they had sex. Okay. They grappled for only a moment before the first guard was joined by another. What's the meaning of this? So he fought guards and then asked, what's the meaning of this? Sure. Okay. Was this written in a hurry? I tell you your brother is dead and you don't want to know how? How? He was murdered. He was killed by your knife. My knife? Your ceremonial dagger. It was found in the body. That can't be. I returned it here to my room after the wedding ceremony. What are you saying? That you think I killed my own brother? It's not outside the realm of possibility, but it's more likely that someone who had access to your weapon and saw an opportunity, whether or not framing you was intentional, remains to be seen. And Bria's like, you think I killed him? That's preposterous, Callan says. She's been with me the entire night. So they asked for proof, and he's like, what proof could I have? Do you want me to measure the depth of the indentations from our bodies in the mattress? That's funny. That's actually funny. I like that. And they were like, well, were you with her all night? Did you see her in this room the entire night? And he says, no, I fell asleep after midnight. For a moment, he saw her as the monster she could be. With her impressive strength and stealth, he had no doubt she was capable of such a feat.
I'm a blood-sucking fiend. Look at my outfit.
But he couldn't shake the image of the sweet girl hiding her face in embarrassment from the night before. If she was a murderer, she was also a very skilled actress. There's no reason not to believe that that could be the truth. She comes from a group of people who literally drinks your blood. So Yeah. No, Bria cried out. I'd never harm anyone. And I suppose you'll also deny feeding on my son? Because they can see the bite marks on Callan's neck. I'd hardly call that harm. And if anyone is to blame, it's us for starving her. Do you not see how she has planted these seeds of doubt in your head? You've spent one evening in her company and already you are quick to defend her. How swiftly men become blinded by a pretty face. Perhaps you are averse to the possibility you've shared your bed with a killer. I mean, yeah, I would be averse to that as well, but also there's no reason why we couldn't have written like, vampires have the power of persuasion here. We could have done more with this. If she is a suspect, she should be placed under house arrest in a manner befitting her station. I'll not risk losing another son to that monster. If she wanted me dead, she could have done it when her fangs were buried in my neck. Maybe she doesn't want you dead. Has it occurred to you that you are now in line to be king? Maybe she wants to be queen. And Bria's like, I don't want that shit. Whatever your motives, it makes no difference. It makes no difference? Damn, their court, their entire legal system is different from ours. You are hereby charged with murder of the crown prince and conspiracy against the crown. So Callan's like, okay, I'll find evidence that she didn't do this. You have until the new moon to change my mind. Conduct your investigation, but do so with the knowledge that whatever the outcome, you are the heir now and will be expected to mete out justice. So he'd have to kill his own wife, I guess. If she is guilty as you say, I will drive the stake through her heart myself. And he's horrified by the realization that now he has to be king. They are leading her away and he hears her scream. So he runs after them and he realizes that she has been put in sunlight because the guards are so stupid that they don't know that vampires can't go into sunlight.
Morning.
The accusations against this woman have yet to be proven true. Do not mistake me for a liar when I say you will all pay if any harm befalls her before judgment can be decided. And looking at his father, he's like disappointed that his father's not crying over his dead son. Now, this should have been the mom, his mom, who is not Torrance' mom. He was Torrance's stepmom. But this should have been the mom because the mom's going to come up for one scene that doesn't make any sense. And then she's going to end up being the villain in the end. Yeah, we are 43% through this book and the villain has not come on page. Sure thing. Bria's being taken to the dungeon. She's like, it surprised her how much she yearned for him to return to her. And I'm like, me too, bitch. You just met. You had like one time and then in the bathroom thinking about him. I don't understand. Their marriage contract had been tenuous at best. They hadn't consummated the marriage and his brother's death provided him a tragic but easy way out if he'd wanted it. Oh yeah, because there's no P and V yet. I guess it's not consummated. You literally dry hump him while feeding from him. I just feel like in vampire land that would amount to consummation. The guards are mean to her and she's like, the prince will have your head if you're not nice to me, which I don't know how she knows that. She just met him last night. We don't take orders from the spare. We only take orders from the king, unless you plan to kill him too. They'd accused her of treason. Santiago had sent her in good faith to sow the seeds of trust between vampires and humans, and if she fought now, she would only be proving that vampires were everything humans feared them to be. Is there no trust, at least on some level, between vampires and humans, considering that the vampires are buying blood instead of just taking it? They're buying it. So I don't understand. She tries to run and get away. They end up capturing her. They throw her in a cell, and there's like a window in the cell with iron bars over it, and she's not able to, she has to like maneuver herself to stay out of the sun, because if she goes into the sun, she's gonna, get burned and then eventually turn into ash. So when the sun's coming through the window, she's in fucking trouble. And who shows up is Pharaoh, her husband's ex-lover. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Bria had only marked on the girl in her memory for the predatory way she watched Callan. She hadn't discussed prior relationships with her new husband. You've barely discussed anything with your new husband. Add it to the list. But she would bet her life she was standing before one of his previous lovers. I hope they kill you slowly. They won't be killing me at all. We'll see about that. They might not have enough evidence to condemn you, but there's definitely not enough to set you free. I mean, yeah, okay. If the sun doesn't cook you alive where you stand, the king will leave you in here to starve. It's as simple as that. This woman sounded far too excited at the prospect of Bria's potential impending death. Yeah, that was implied. Thank you. And what, you think Prince Callan is going to run back into your arms, confess his love, make you his queen? My name has already replaced yours on his tongue. He has washed the taste of you from his lips and discovered an appetite for darker and sweeter things. You're not even a memory. You're a bad dream, a mistake, a regret. If anything happens to me, the only thing he'll spare you is a passing glance. I'd save yourself the heartache and move on now. That entire paragraph, this entire scene was completely unnecessary. We did not need girl hate for the sake of girl hate. Absolutely none. This does nothing to develop these characters whatsoever. So of course Pharaoh calls her a bitch. She like reaches through the bars to try to get her, which was really dumb to reach your arms into the cage of a literal fucking predator. And so Bria fucking bites her. I would have too. Her blood was nothing like Callan's, tangy and bitter, where his has been the sweetest nectar. Oh, thank you. Prince Callan is my husband. You may not respect our union, but we do. If you're at all to blame for what's happened to Callan's brother, you've made the biggest mistake of your life and quite possibly the last one. Now leave before I decide to test my strength against that of your iron bars. So in Callan's POV, he decides to go talk to his mom. Torin was not her son. Callan's mother had raised Torin from infancy, his father quick to marry after the tragic death of his first wife. He goes into her room. Tear-streaked cheeks and a trembling lip were all he managed to see before his mother engulfed him in a tight embrace. She sobbed against his shoulder, wavering between hip-cupping pants and ear-splitting wails of anguish. Through it all, he held her. How could he not? She was his mother. He wouldn't falter when she needed him the most. Does this sound like a cold, unfeeling woman? Okay, just checking. Holding her at arm's length while she dabbed at her eyes with an embroidered curb chip, she composed herself quickly, drawing whatever royal magic they all possessed that kept them from appearing too human in the face of overwhelming emotions. We'll get through this somehow. It will all be all right. Before he got the chance to respond to her misplaced optimism, she was straightening her skirts and looking entirely too nonplussed in the current circumstances. At least that foul creature has been dealt with, she said. That bitch of a vampire that murdered Torin. I don't think she's responsible for Torin's death. I'm reviewing the evidence in the hopes to uncover the truth. You can't mean that. It is no mere coincidence that a member of the royal family turns up dead the very night we allow the first vampire within our walls, a vampire who now stands to gain much from his death. They didn't know her as he did. I don't think anybody in this castle has, let her dry hump their leg while she sucked on their neck. So yes, certainly that is true. Not that he knew her very well at all, but he liked to think that some intrinsic part of him would sense if she was this great deceiver everyone painted her to be. Why? Because she dry humped you? You need not fear, my son. I'm sure we can have the marriage annulled. We'll find you another wife in no time, a human wife. The girls will be lining up to take her place. You're wrong about her. You all are. Bria had no more desire to be queen than I did to be king. She didn't do this. I'll prove it. How can you say such things? You will make a great king, Callan. That is irrelevant. Whether or not I will be a good king is irrelevant. I had no desire to be king. He heard the rhythmic click-clack of his mother's approach and tensed in anticipation of her touch, but nothing came. Though he sensed her waiting at his shoulder, she offered him no comfort. This is entirely different from the woman who rushed into his arms, sobbing her eyes out at the beginning of this chapter. He'd long since learned not to expect such things from her. He had to pry her off of him earlier when she was sobbing. What do you mean? But the coldness of her inaction stung more than it should. The beginning of the I'm confused. He calls her demeanor icy. He was holding her while she sobbed. For every dusk there is a dawn. Do not let this tragedy taint the dawn of your legacy. When a legacy begins with death, it cannot be anything but tainted. And then he leaves. So we just flip-flopped immediately on the mom, and it's oh, okay, so the mom did it. Okay, we get an entire chapter of Bria, and this is why this book is just so inefficient. We get an entire chapter of Bria just lamenting on her being in this cell and thinking about possibly trying to escape and how she needs to stay awake and stay alive. A complete waste of words and page time. Callan starts his investigation. He finds out that his brother's body was found in a stairwell. There were no signs of struggle, and the guy was stabbed in his front. He was stabbed in his chest, and there are no vampire bites on him. His captain of the guard cousin says that nobody had access to his room, and he's Callan says, a lot of people have access to my room. The realization dawns on Emery, the cousin. Oh yeah, lots of people, the servants. And I'm yeah, the servants. And then immediately they go to where he has all of the servants. The conversation was so weird because it could have been, instead of doing that, which was a waste of time and words and doesn't make sense, we could have just been the only people with access to your rooms are the servants. We have sequestered the servants in the hall if you would like to now proceed with interrogating them. They're whoever is responsible will feel the full might of justice. They go talk to a servant woman named Beryl, and this is actually the woman who Bria demanded to go get blood. Last night, she was I need blood. And this woman is the one that ran away. And she's there was a lot of blood at the scene, not mostly because of Torin, but because I was bringing Bria goat's blood, and when I found his body, I spilled it everywhere. And they've only asked her like one question, and he's like, I worry about asking her too many questions. I'm like, you've asked one question. You have to interrogate. Like, I just, stop it. He then finds out that Pharaoh, his ex-lover, was attacked by Bria. He's like, why was Pharaoh in the dungeon talking to Bria? She asked to see the prisoner, and we thought it was fine since she hadn't been placed in isolation. And she's so weak with the daylight and all. And Callan's like, so Bria's not doing well. Now he's pissed. The Lady Pharaoh willfully endangered herself by entering a dungeon with and likely antagonizing a sleep-deprived vampire. You just told me that said vampire in a weakened, vulnerable state had the opportunity to kill my former lover or use her as leverage to ensure her escape, and she did neither of those things. Does that sound like someone deserving of being incarcerated on murder charges? So he relieves these guards of duty, and his cousin Emery's like, those were 3 of my strongest men. They were your strongest, but they weren't your brightest. I don't feel like have much room to talk. So the door to Bria's cell opens. She assumes they're here to kill her after all. Callan comes and gets her. He's disgusted with the way that they have treated her. He says it's inhumane. If Santiago knew we were keeping a vampire in such conditions, it would be war! Free her at once! And I cannot believe that they never had that conversation sooner. It doesn't really make sense that they didn't just put her on house arrest anyway. I don't understand. We just did all of this for the sake of drama, not because it actually is the steps, that make sense in the context of this world. We are returning my chambers. Captain, please ensure that every window between here and there is covered, and I want this cell destroyed. So he takes her to his room. That we just breeze past, like, them talking to each other. They don't talk to each other, apparently. It doesn't say that they did, because they don't start talking until after they've gone to his room, fallen asleep on a sofa, snuggling each other. She wakes up. Actually, it says, wrapping herself tighter in Callan's embrace, she settled her head against his shoulder, content to watch the rise and fall of his chest. He must have wasted the rest of the day holding her. Bria bolted upright, alarmed by the notion. What? Callan hadn't said anything about freeing her from the charges. She had no idea if he found his brother's true killer. You didn't think about this before? That was the first thing I would have asked. Am I free? Did you find the killer? He roused with her name on his lips, and it was the sweetest sound she'd ever heard. She didn't know what possessed this man who was practically a stranger. Yeah, you think? To risk everything to save her. Me neither. I don't know why either. It doesn't make sense, to be honest. Once again, she thanked the 7 moons that it had been him at the end of that aisle, for surely no other human would have placed his vampire bride above family, king, and country. Surely not, because it would not make sense for it to happen once, let alone more than once. Are you well? Are you hurt? I'm sorry I didn't come sooner. Sorry I let them take you at all. You did what you had to, and you freed me. I will be forever in your debt. There shall be never anything owed between us, ever. You are my life now. In the shock of Torrance passing, I lost sight of that, but I will spend every day of my too short life making up to you. This book is too short to be doing insta-love to this degree. Your faith in me is unwarranted. I would never expect you to choose me above your own family. You hardly know me. I know that you would rather starve than feed on someone against their will. I know that you may risk your life to marry a stranger, all in the hopes of helping your people. Yeah, and I don't really understand the stakes for her people. So if we could elaborate, we're not gonna. I know that when you're met with hateful words and reproachful stares, you held your head high. We have a lifetime to learn about each other, a human life that is, and I am glad I can spend time with one so noble and kind. It was not my intent for us to rule, but I will kneel before you every day until our people hold you in the same regard that I do. You have met once before this. This is ridiculous. What do you mean? And then they start making out. His tongue brushed the tips of her fangs, tentatively at first, but becoming bolder as he deepened the kiss. The intoxicating taste of his blood filled her mouth, and she groaned as warmth blossomed in her core.
I was once a badass vampire, but love and a pesky curse defanged me.
So he's ripping up his tongue on her fangs? Ew. And then there's, boobies and friction and pressure and connection, and the leash on his control disappeared like the breaking of a dam. Disappeared? It doesn't really disappear. It cracks and shatters, breaks apart. Anyway, okay, that's fine. I wasn't of the right mind to tell you before, but you are easily the most magnificent creature I've ever laid eyes on. And you are mine, she says. You are the most magnificent creature I've ever laid eyes on. And you are mine, she responded. You are my what? Mine what? 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 I don't know. Tell me you want this. Tell me you want me. I want this. I want you, Callan. I need you. Oh my God, this is so shallow. I do not care that this is happening whatsoever. Am I supposed to be rooting for these people? Be serious. I believe you were the one that suggested I inspect my bounty. And it was you who claimed we're equals, and you're still half clothed. He takes off his clothing, and it says that she can now see finally his proud He leaned forward, taking her wrists in his hands and holding them in place above her hands. Taking her wrists in his hands and holding them in place above her hands. The wrist is connected to the hand. It's always above, actually. You can't hold them in place. It's already held. It's already held in place. Just naturally, that's how hands work. Taking her wrists in his hand and holding them in place above her hands. It probably meant above her head, but that's not what it wrote. That's not what it says. Growling in frustration, she yanked against his restraint, needing to take control of her desire. If you do not put your inside me, you'll what, bite me? Then he fully seated himself in one thrust, and she immediately urged him on, thrusting savagely. I don't like it. Waves of ecstasy building to a crescendo that was greater than she'd ever known. Of course, it's the best to ever say, because, you know, that's what we do here. He, guides her mouth to his neck. She buried her fangs in his neck. Good for them. It might have been the blood, but she suspected it was as much the joy she felt in that moment. She hadn't known she could feel this way as a vampire. She assumed the aspect of human condition had vanished along with her mortality, but here she was, basking in the glow of their union. If they could overcome the obstacle of her wrongful accusations, they just might stand a chance at happiness. Well, yeah, there's no other stakes standing between you two, so of course it is. In the next chapter, they're discussing, and it says, "Why did you agree to this marriage? The unification of our peoples. Surely there was something else, some other reason for you to give up your life. I was made for this purpose, to wed you." And I thought that she was going to be revealed to be a tool of Santiago, and did kill his brother, and I'm like, oh, freaking cool. I like that idea. How are they gonna overcome that? We're 79% through this book. That's all what happens. Would have been great. If this is to be our last night together, I'd rather not dwell on the negative. Run away with me, he said. Neither of us has any desire to rule, and until the true murderer is found, you aren't safe here. Running solves only our problems and does nothing for our people. There is no law stating that a great king must be a willing king. You have the makings of a great king within you. Only through courage and strength of will can we succeed where you are expected to fail. You're right, of course you're right. Get dressed, it's time we clear your name. As he stared into her eyes, he saw the future that they were fighting for, a world where their people could coexist without fear and hatred coloring their views. They left the room together and faced their battles as they always would, arm in arm. They go and talk to first his cousin, and he's explaining, it was your knife. We assume it's Bria. There were no signs of struggle, no other injuries, and no trace of any known toxins. And no signs of struggle is unfortunately one of the reasons we considered Bria so strongly. And Bria said, your assumption that vampire victims do not struggle is unfound. And that should say unfounded. Humans almost always struggle against a bite unless something is done to incapacitate them, like breaking their neck or drugging them. He was quite intoxicated at the wedding, Callan says. If he had his wits about him enough to walk to his room, his natural response to a threat on his life would have been to fight. I don't care how drunk he was. And the captain said, you said that is true for a bite, but he wasn't bitten, he was stabbed. Then why is Bria a suspect? What the fuck would why would a vampire just stab somebody and then just leave? Wouldn't they be overcome with bloodlust? I don't get this. The prince saw his attacker and did not struggle. He was stabbed in the chest. Doesn't that indicate that he knew his attacker? Yes, but the king will argue that he knew almost everyone in the castle that night, I suspect. And none of the witnesses who saw him heading to his room are suspects? None of them would have had access to your room to retrieve the dagger after the ceremony. Then who would have had access to your room after you replaced the dagger and also knew where you kept it? And he's like, well, Pharaoh. His cousin's like, well, it can't be Pharaoh because me and her are fucking. Or at least they did the one time. And he's like, she came on to me with a vengeance. And Callan's like, it probably was vengeance. Again, we could have cut Pharaoh out and done way more world building here. So he goes to see the king. They all go to see the king and queen. And he says, Callan would have expected two parents grieving the loss of a child to be less at ease. Their ability to mask their emotions far exceeded his own mastery of the skill. It made him wonder if he ever really knew them at all, or if they'd always been these false public puppets. Again, this does not feel in line with the fact that his mom was bawling her eyes out and needed him to comfort her. You dare parade around this castle with your brother's killer on your arm. She is my wife. That marriage is a sham, or at very least it's an attempt to claim the throne, if not upend our entire monarchy. Your arguments are going tiresome, said Bria. I had no ulterior motives for coming here aside from entering into a marriage agreed upon by both our sovereigns. I told Callan that we couldn't run from our responsibilities, but if every citizen in this kingdom is as close-minded as you, perhaps our lives would be better spent somewhere else. And Callan nods, and his mom's like, what is she saying? You have to be king, you have to, or it would have all been for naught. You'll ruin everything I've worked towards. After all I've done for you, for us, also you could be king. Alarm bangs pealed inside Callan's head. alarm bangs? But he fought against the pieces as they fell into place. It wasn't true. He wouldn't believe it. The blood on my hands is worth it if it meant that one day will see the crown on your head. I only killed him so you would be king. The king says nothing this entire time. In fact, we don't even hear what he's doing, what he's saying, what he's feeling, what he's like emoting, nothing. They just ignore that he is in the room, or the book does, the entire time, other than he just says the word Ivana, ? So then the captain of the guard, Emery, the cousin, is creeping towards the queen. I don't know why he can't just say you're under arrest. There's like 4 people in this room. They could all take her down. She doesn't have a weapon. Why are we sneaking up on this old lady? How could you do this? Callan said. I did it for you. You did it for yourself. He was your son in all accounts but blood, and you killed him. You killed Torin. I did this country a favor. Torin was never destined for greatness as you are.
All right, I get it. You're evil. Do we have to chat about it all day?
This doesn't really make sense because she's mean and Torin seems to hate vampires and Callan doesn't seem to hate vampires. So I don't really know why she wanted Torin out of the picture. I don't get it. Her motives just don't make any sense. You would stand there and accuse others of your crime while his blood still crushed your fingernails. So Emery, the captain of the guard, tackles the queen to the floor. She screams. She doesn't attempt to fight him off. Like a rushing river, guards poured in from every passageway to assist their captain. Bria had forgotten their presence in light of the spectacle, but she suspected they hung back on silent orders from their captain. I wasn't aware that there were any guards in the room. I don't understand what's happening. She hoped they had enough evidence to absolve her of any wrongdoing and convict the queen. She confessed! She looked at the king then, as silent and still as a statue, and he just says nothing. Unhand me! I'm your queen! You will do as I command! And Bria kind of laughs, and the queen calls her a blood whore. Callan moves to strip his mother of her titles, and the king seconds this. And so then the captain says all in favor, and I'm like, wait, what? Isn't it enough that the king says it? Before, when it was Bria getting arrested, they didn't do this all in favor shit. You are hereby accused of murder, treason, and conspiracy against the crown. In light of recent events, you shall be tried and judged as any citizen of the kingdom. May your trial be swift and your sentence just. Again, they didn't do this for Bria, so okay. And then it says, Bria heard the tether snap, heard Ivana's heart race as she severed whatever thread had been holding back her emotion. I don't understand how you audibly hear that tether snap, but all right. Fearing the wrath of the cornered animal, Bria yanked Callan behind her, placing herself between her husband and the wild beast that was his mother. Callan, Callan, my son, my darling boy, I did this for you, so you would be king. I did it out of love. You don't know what love is, mother. This does not hit. This is so bad. No care was taken in the writing of this. He didn't feel any ounce of remorse. He did, however, allow himself a moment to mourn the family they could have been had they not been torn apart by ambition and political maneuvering.
Everything's all right, and we all get to be not staked through the heart. Good work, team.
He looked at his father. It was just the 2 of them now. The 2 of them and Bria, he supposed. I guess. Never in his life did he expect to see his royal majesty kneeling before the vampire princess. Me either. None of this makes any sense. Princess Bria, I'm not wrong very often, but I owe you an apology. I wouldn't be the king I am today if I couldn't own up to my mistakes. After seeing the evidence of my own prejudices, it is clear that this country needs the union between you and my son more than I expected. I hope that you can forgive a heartbroken old man, but even if you can't, I hope that you're still willing to join my son in creating a better future for the people of our kingdoms. She holds out her arms and hugs the king. Your Majesty, your flaws are what make you human. It's not a weakness to err, but rather a chance to learn and grow. This is so it feels like a after school special where everybody's friends in the end. If I could be a catalyst for such change, it would be my honor to stand beside your son and see our world made better. He wondered, not for the first time, if vampires possessed some gift for controlling emotions. The second his skin made contact with hers, he felt his troubles melt away. He didn't know how he had lived his entire life with the reassurance of her touch. Well, you haven't. You met yesterday. What do you mean? You haven't lived your entire life with the reassurance. It should say without, it's a typo. How are you feeling, she says. No one had asked him how he felt when his father had named Torin the heir over him. Torin was older than you. Isn't that how it works? No one had asked how he felt when Torin had died. Boy, that's all right. We can figure it out. Together, she says. He nodded. Together. The end.
Good work, team.
100 pages, and what did we even achieve? Nothing. Again, I just want to point out to you that in less pages, we did something so tremendous in both this book and this book. These are 2 of my favorite books of the year, and something so special was done in both of these. We could have done, the fact that Santiago never comes on page, it doesn't make sense. I don't know why vampires weren't at the wedding. The fact that they don't know how to have this vampire in their kingdom doesn't make sense. The fact that they didn't have a conversation before before they got married doesn't make sense. So much of this was just how quickly can we get to them dry humping? And I don't really know why, because we had some great ideas here. Why don't we take the opportunity to work with them? And I don't hate the idea of like, you know, the mom killed the son. I just don't like it here because we flip-flopped on who that woman was in one chapter. And also, I don't know why she wants her own son to be king when Torin was more politically aligned with her than her own son is. She hates vampires. Callan doesn't. I don't know how he ended up that way, but Torin did. And Torin was also raised by that woman, even if he's not her biological son. It doesn't make sense that she wanted to kill Torin. And I think that we could have done this thing where it's like he was wondering, you know, can vampires manipulate emotions? That could have been something that isn't true, but is said about vampires. So she could have been accused of doing that and he's wondering, am I feeling this way because, you know, of real emotions, or am I feeling this way because vampires have that capability? But in reality, she does not have that capability. And Pharaoh, the ex-lover, had no reason to be here whatsoever. And the fact that Bria doesn't know where she comes from, but is expected to be this tool for the vampires, doesn't make sense. That should greatly affect who you are. And these people are so incredibly one-dimensional. How painful to read about them. What was the point? What a disappointment. In less pages, we did more characterization with the 6 Deaths of the Saint than we did here. By like, I mean, this has half the pages. I think it's only like 46 pages or something. On top of that, has missing words and typos or words used incorrectly. Just really not a good use of ideas in short fiction. Just not really worth your time, in my opinion. If you do have a favorite vampire romance, please leave it below. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, leave a vampire emoji in the comments. There is one, right? I thought there was a Bible emoji, and I told y'all in a recent video, leave a Bible emoji, and it's not there. So I don't know where I got the idea that there's a Bible emoji. Sorry about that. Hopefully there's a vampire one. If not, leave a vampire related emoji down below. Okay, thanks so much for watching. See you next time. Bye.
What's the plan?
The vampire attacks you.
And then what?
The vampire kills you. We watch, we rejoice.
Okay, before I go, I have to say thank you for being a friend to my Therapy Bills patrons, and those are Alexander, Ashley H, Astra, Brittany Bobitney, Call Me Kodiak, Cami, Choco's Homesick for Taiwan, Chris the Horror Therapist, DJ Rocktopus, Ellie, Emerald Dodge, Aaron with 2 E's, Eric D, Jess, Joel White, John E, K, Kaleno K, Casey McKenzie, Kate W, Katie M, Quinn, Lady Kittybug, Lady Chips, Lauren K, Lemon Jelly, Lex, Lily B, Matteraptor, Max B, Melissa, Minby, Mixer Boneless, Alice, Peggy Luhu, Rain, Reese, SJ, Samar, Scarlett, SMK, Steph B, 3 Raccoons in a Trench Coat, Urchin Audrey, White Raven 13, and Zorvictia. Thank you all so much for being here and for being a friend. And I have to say thank you for being a friend to my Potato Starch Marxist patrons, and those are Alejandra, Alicia Needs a Nap, Alistair, Althea, Amanda D, Andy, Angelica, Artie the Ninth, Ava, Ballads and Bookends, Beck, Bly Lavender, Bookish by Jenna, Bookish Rabbit, Book Noodle, Bree Caitlin, Kate B, Caitlin P, Carlin, Carly, Casper, Kate W, Catherine, Kathy, Claire Online, Cole, Colleen, Corwin, Cosmic, Darius, Danielle, Darren, Desiree Michelle, Dilf Enthusiast, Dorothea is not like other girls, Drive By Thinker, Evie, Emily A, Emma, Fiona, Francis, Gadarn, Halia Artisan, Hannah C, Harpy Kuro, Helen P, Harissing, H. Rissing. Oh my god, you're gonna have to tell me how to say that. I'm so sorry. JM Tennant, Jay is on Olympus, Jelly V, Jello Salad, Jen Michelle, Gender Queer, Jenny G, Jessa Sue, Jill, Jojo Bookish, Juicy Wizard, Kathleen, Catherine, Katie L, Katrina, Kaylee, Kayala, Kendra, KMTB, Laughing Cat Dog, Laura is Angry, Lauren G, Lazarus Ray, Library of Scars, Lindsay, Lisa, Lisa L, LP, Luciri, Lustful Octopus, MK Martin, Maddie, Madison, Man-Eating Plant, Megan, Malara, Mentally Unwell, May, Mima Who, Molly, Myth Lesbian, Never, Nicole G, Nicole R, Paige P, Pandemonium, Paul, Penelope, Penny Chilling, Foxglove, Plague Carrier, Pandemonium, Queen Cereal, Rachel B, Reba, Rebecca, Rebecca R, Rhea S, Ronnie, Rosie Thorns, Rowan, Sikoria, Saintbringer, Sakia Lume, Sarah H, Sarah the Bear, Sarah Z, Shamed, Shannon, Sean, Sophie, Stardust, T. Delegati, Talia, That Nerdy Mystic, This Is Not a Trap, what a name, Tiana, Too Thick to Work Today, Trash Can Teddy, Triple M, Tito Phoenix, Unicorn Jenny, Waves, Wobbs, Writer A. Thank you all so much for being here and for being a friend. Bye.